Perfect. Recording has started. Hello, and thank you all for joining today's call. We are joined by Abe and Divya and some other Service Fabric team members who have some exciting updates to share with us. I know a lot of you have been waiting for this much anticipated call. But before we get started, just a few quick reminders. While this call is being recorded, all content shared is under NDA. Please don't share any specific information unless you have been told that you could do so. The recording will be shared out to the initial post promoting the webcast in the Azure community, as well as on the Azure Talk calendar. Feel free to use the chat if you have any questions or come off mute. And without further ado, Abe, I will hand it over to you to kick us off.
Yep. Hey, folks. So thanks, everybody, for attending the Azure Service Fabric Tech Community Call here today on January 26th. We will be presenting, if you can go to the next slide. Divya, can you go to the next slide?
Yeah.
In this release, we're going to be announcing Service Fabric Runtime Release, what we're going to actually be doing at a high level, as well as what our retirement deprecation paths are. Next, we're going to have just a quick rundown of what Service Fabric Managed Clusters are, just to reiterate some points that you may or may not know. And then we're going to be talking about some new features that are coming up for SFMC. The remaining time will be held for Q&A. All right, if you go to the next slide, Divya, I'll hand it off to you for runtime releases.
Hi, welcome to 67th community call, and thank you for joining. So today's session would be, I would be basically covering on the updates on Service Fabric Runtime. So just to give a heads up or just to call out, so the key feature of upcoming SF Runtime that we are currently working on is to include support for .NET 7. We did receive multiple pings. So we have received multiple pings for this, and we are currently working on enabling support for the same. We should be ready by the end of Q1. So looking forward to enabling the support for .NET 7, and then this should be also announced in release notes once we are ready for the rollout for the release. So please expect this to be somewhere around end of Q1 2023. This is the key feature that I wanted to give a call out on. The other thing that we would like to call out is the retirement and deprecation path call out. .NET Core 3.1 has reached end of support and across Microsoft, and we would like all the SF users to move to the supported versions of .NET 6, .NET Framework 4.6.2 and newer. So that is one of the call out. This is the same thing that we have been calling out in the release notes as well, and we would like to reiterate again here. Similarly, we also wanted to talk about archival and removal of older versions of Service Fabric. There are still Service Fabric users who are on the older versions, unsupported older versions, which are less than 7.0, and we highly recommend everyone to move towards 7.0 and older. The current supported versions are 9.0 and 9.1. We want everyone to move to 9.0, 9.1. By February 2023, we plan to remove all these older versions from Download Center, which means there would be interruptions with the workloads. So this is also one of the things that we have been calling out in release notes for some time now, and we would highly recommend to move to the supported version. So that's an update from Service Fabric Runtime. I would like to hand over to Abhay, who is going to talk about SFMC features. Please, if you have any questions, please post it on the chat. I cannot see the chat window. We are happy to provide answers later once we are done with the presentation. Abhay?
Yeah, everybody, thanks for attending again. Let's get into Service Fabric managed clusters. First of all, as you guys know, Azure Service Fabric is a distributed system platform. It makes it easier to package, deploy, and manage clusters and essentially host reliable microservices. Service Fabric also addresses significant challenge in developing and managing cloud-native applications. One of the offerings that we have is Service Fabric Managed Clusters, which I think most of everybody knows about. And Service Fabric Managed Clusters streamlines your deployment and cluster management experience. Let's just take a moment to look at some of the advantages of SFMC. SFMC will enable you to create clusters without needing to define all independent ARM resources that make up the cluster. You essentially have a simplified ARM resource model and is enabled by routing and orchestrating cluster operations through the Service Fabric resource provider. The number of JSON lines, for example, if you create what's called the traditional SFRP cluster, is thousands of lines. With SFMC, you go down to hundreds of lines, which is quite less. In fact, it's about 100 lines or less. There's some other advantages of SFMC, one of which is to manage a cluster certificate. We manage it completely for you. We rotate it every 90 days for security purposes. Another one is availability of zone spanning clusters. So you can actually have improved availability by having more availability zones, and this removes and protects you from single points of failure. Managed cluster supports integrated auto scaling, which gives great elasticity and enables reduction of nodes on demand. This reduces the management overhead and potential business impact by monitoring, optimizing the amount of nodes servicing workload. And here you'll also see other advantages that I've listed here, such as auto OS update and in-place OS SKU. That all can be done without any outages to your service. Also, SFMC has advantage in networking and security, where we're able to manage your VNet and subnets. We're able to manage your load balancers, your NSG rules are configured, so on and so forth. So all of these are some significant advantages of SFMC, and that's why we're asking customers to utilize SFMC rather than traditional Service Fabric resource provider. That doesn't mean that won't be around, but we are asking customers to move to SFMC or create new clusters on SFMC. Let's go ahead and just take a moment and now look at some of the new features that we've launched for SFMC or that are going to launch. Divya, could you go to the next slide? Okay, some of the new features that's coming up by the end of January will be the BYO VNet, specifically subnet per node type. Why is that a great feature? Well, that's good because now you're able to have additional, essentially additional network isolation. Instead of now having an entire cluster with, one subnet, now you can have specific subnets per node type. So again, when a node type there's a primary node type for seed nodes, while there's a secondary node type for your application, which is the recommended approach. You can essentially have different subnets for greater network isolation. Next is custom image support. This is another great one that's out there as well. This custom image support provides additional flexibility to the customers to use custom image to bootstrap configurations and such as preloaded applications, application configuration, and other OS configurations. So instead of having to now pick the one that's preloaded, you can now have a custom image, and you can create a cluster with specific node types and nodes with that custom image. So that's another one that's releasing here very soon. The ones that are coming up by end of April is maintenance windows and fast zonal update. Maintenance windows, why is that a good idea? Well, often customers have stated that, we don't want auto OS upgrade, an OS upgrade or a runtime update to happen randomly. They want it to happen during specific times. This is a feature that has been asked continuously by many customers, and so therefore we're now going to be releasing maintenance windows here by end of April. It might actually be a little bit sooner, but it should be by end of April. We should have maintenance windows that should be released. And lastly is fast zonal update. What we found is customers are trying to update their application, or OS upgrades are happening, and it's just taking a long time. One of the reasons we saw is because the number of upgrade domains was 5, and now we're going to reduce that upgrade domain down to 3. By enabling this functionality, which by the way is completely optional, You can do this, and you can basically increase your application deployment time. How much that will be dependent on your application and how long a deployment time takes, but it should be slower it should be faster if you enable this specific feature. Those are the kind of the key features that we have listed here. I know one of the ones that I'm sure people will talk about is Linux support for SFMC. This continues to be not something that we prioritize because of the fact that we just don't have enough customers who are wanting a Linux on SFMC. Since we don't have that kind of need, we still have not prioritized it, and that continues to still be the position. We will continue to look at all of the different channels that talk about it, but if there's enough customers wanting it, definitely we will prioritize that. But for now, it is not. That's kind of that high level of what the new and upcoming features are. I think the remaining time will be for Q&A. I will get back to some of the questions that are on the chat here as well. So Katie and Miguel, take it over to you guys for Q&A.
Yes, sounds good. I know there are questions in the chat, so if anyone wants to come off mute and ask their question, I will give you that opportunity to do so. Nope. Okay.
I've been running my fabric on .NET 7 for a month. I haven't seen any issues. Are you guys just playing it safe, or have you actually found things that aren't working on Net 7 that you're holding back official support?
I can take that question. So we are still in the process of enabling the support. So we are constantly testing with .NET 7, and we did not find any problems per se with .NET 7. So I haven't. We haven't figured out any problems with .NET 7. So it's like we're still in the test process.
Jack, did that answer your question, or do you still have follow-up questions or concerns?
Oh, no, that answered it. I mean, basically, in my environment, the reality is that until Service Fabric supports 7, I can't upgrade other platforms just due to shared libraries. So, I didn't know whether I was really jumping the gun or not, but it sounds like I'm safe, and worst case, it's going to be the end of this quarter.
Hey, Jack, this is Mike. I'll just chime in. Yeah, I guess I'll frame it this way, like kind of worst case, you'll face unknown bugs, like Divya was saying. And additionally, if you have to call in for support, we may ask you to kind of repackage and downgrade to a supported version for troubleshooting. That's kind of it in a nutshell.
Thanks.
Well, I've got a list of things. So I guess I hope everyone had a pleasant holiday. Are there any updates on YARP as a system service, or should we still be deploying what's in the GitHub repo ourselves in the short term?
The latter is still an external add-on, if you will, like you're framing it for now. We're working we'll come back with a better story, I won't say in a month, but hopefully in a couple of months. We're working on a plan for SFYARP, a more inclusive plan, I should say. So
great. I guess I've been dealing with a problem recently. There's something in my build pipeline that is producing invalid SFPKG files. And it deploys, I get an error that says that the schema is invalid, and just kind of points me towards the schema file to sort it out. Is there any chance I could request maybe a tool that indicates what about the schema is failing, given that the schema file itself is quite large? Or is there a tool to somehow narrow that?
A good question.
Sorry.
None that I know of, but again, that's it's not yes, I mean the schema that you're trying to use, and it's basically tied to Service Fabric, but that's a generic pattern, right? With that.
Yeah, the error itself just says there's something wrong with a service. Unfortunately, my application spans a couple dozen services, so it's not clear which service it is or what even's wrong with it. So it's not even something I can search for and kind of narrow it down. It's just try to deploy and it just doesn't work. And I guess there's a tool that I saw, a PowerShell script. Yeah, exactly that one. Great call out. Tried to use that, does the same thing. It just kind of says invalid schema. Here's where we install the schemas to. Good luck.
Okay. Did you try opening a support case with us? Not yet.
But I can.
I would say, yeah, just means in case if because Jiten is from an engineering team, and I think on this call he has the most experience with it. Because if he's also suggesting this and we are drawing blanks on it, I would say just open a support case and we'll fast track that.
Okay, great. Okay. I guess speaking of the managed clusters, are there any plans to add support for changing the management endpoint like you can on non-managed clusters, so that I could point the management endpoint to my own custom domain name?
No, we don't have any plans for that right now.
Okay. So I guess just to confirm what I guess support had said on that is that I just have to use the endpoint that y'all provide.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, you could. There's other alternatives like just CNAMEs, or you could use Traffic Manager, which would cost.
Well, I tried the CNAME, but it really did not care for that. I think it told me that certificate pinning was enabled or something rather, and so I couldn't just drop in my own there. And so I assumed from that's why you set it in the management endpoint on a non-managed cluster, is so that the cluster knows what domain I'm going to try to use. It can pull that certificate. It authenticates all the way through. But either way, I still just use that management endpoint. Okay, so custom load metrics. So I was reading through this. I saw that there's plenty of information on how it is that I can send you all sorts of my built-in metrics, my own custom load metrics. Y'all can figure out how to organize all the various services. I've been reading through a recently, I guess maybe last year, open source project called Reactor. Fantastic tool. Really psyched about it. There's not a whole. I know that in Microsoft this thing runs on Service Fabric. Unfortunately, I can't find any information about how it runs on Service Fabric. So I've been trying to rebuild the tool to understand how to build it on Service Fabric myself. If y'all have any resources you can point me towards, I would love to see them. But I guess my bigger question is, it's kind of alluded to in the documentation that the standing queries themselves are deployed to a bunch of these query engines, and that how it's mapped out is handled by the service. But in order to assign the work, I guess the queries themselves, so the query engines, it seems like I need to have some way of tapping into all these load metrics that I've sent into Service Fabric so that I can understand which partitions and which services themselves are now deemed higher load than others by Service Fabric. So, kind of mirroring what y'all are doing from a placement perspective, but then also kind of pulling that back out so that I can say, oh, this node's a little bit busy. Don't assign more subscriptions to it. Is there any way of tapping into those current load metrics?
But you bring a lot of good insights. The thing is, I'm not aware of Reactor at all. Okay, so means any information, and again, you can blame it on to the fact that most of the team is still pretty new to Service Fabric, and these are good use cases, and we would have to double click on it. And hey, but I'm still waiting on.
I had 2 months to think about these.
I'm still waiting for that email from you. So if you can mention this, we can get someone to investigate. But currently, at least I am pleasantly surprised by what you have pointed out. And at this point of time, I don't have much information about it, and I'll punt it to the team, Jiten, Divya, Mike, Abhay, in case if you are aware or anyone in the community who is aware and would like to, help out with and us will be great.
I was looking up internal website. I think Reactor, there is a page which talks about the streaming platform. So maybe check it out and connect him with the people that own that platform, and then they can provide the secret sauce, how it works.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the group, I guess the commercial entity that is kind of running the open source side of it are themselves building a service fabric kind of based service of this, and aren't inclined to share a whole lot of details about how that piece works. So yeah, I guess they kind of taken it from Service Fabric in Microsoft to building kind of their own thing, open sourcing the gist of it along the way. But then, now it's back in Service Fabric, and it's kind of their closely guarded, proprietary secret at this point. So, that's cool. More power to them. But they're kind of hush hush on their Slack chat about how exactly they've gotten this to work.
Okay. I mean, I can't comment on that one. It's probably
Sure.
their IP, so for sure. But essentially, you're looking for a way to tap into the metrics that Service Fabric collects and use it for some logic in your service.
Exactly. So
Okay.
just as you're using it for placement, I'd like to use it for a work distribution.
The best people to connect with would be the Plb team. They do all that placement management on our side, and they actually look into all the metric stuff. So maybe Divya or maybe Bhaskar, you can connect him with the Plb folks.
Absolutely, Whit. So if you can send me again your much awaited email, we can consolidate and
can you post your
call we can have on metrics or placement load balancing, and I can
you post your email in the chat?
Come again, Whit?
Can you post your email in the chat so I can send you something?
I shall right away. Miguel is doing the needful.
Great, and I will send you something this afternoon.
Brilliant, thank you.
I guess that's the questions I had. I did source 2 questions from people who weren't able to make it on the call today. A while back, there was, it may have even been a couple years ago now, there was some discussion about having some kind of standalone SDK-based support for state replication and reliable collections outside of Service Fabric services. Is there any kind of sense of an update as to where that might be today?
Sorry, could you repeat your question? I was distracted.
Yeah,
sorry.
Essentially, is there any way of how the various state replication, reliable collections, kind of taking that functionality out of Service Fabric itself and into kind of a more standalone SDK based thing, so that those capabilities can be used outside of SF environments?
That's a great idea, but no, we not, because again, if you look at it, a lot of, I would say, the functional underpinnings are supported by the Service Fabric framework itself. So even though, and if you look at it, there is a generic actor framework, right? We build on the actor, the reliable collections itself. But at this point of time, no means. At least I'm not aware that any other group, or at least we as Service Fabric, are not investing in that part.
Fair enough. And then, are there any plans to consolidate or expand the various PowerShell modules for Service Fabric? Right now there's PowerShell Core, there's PowerShell for Windows, PowerShell way back when, PowerShell vNext. I don't even, PWSH. I'm not even sure what version that is. It seems like I've got like 4 different versions of PowerShell, maybe more on my machine, and not all of them support the Service Fabric modules. Are there any plans to either have wider PowerShell coverage for these modules, or consolidate on one and say, here's the one that's used, or what are your thoughts?
Frankly, with the thing is, at this point of time, okay, let me take a step back. We haven't at least heard much noise around it, or developers complaining enough. So at this point of time, I would say no. Means if the question is around like, are we trying to consolidate? Did I grok your questions correctly? Is it consolidating
Yeah.
or
Yeah, because I guess there's like the ancient Azure RM module, right?
Mhm.
And then there's the AZ.Service Fabric module itself. I mean,
Mhm.
not even talking about just the different PowerShells themselves, right? But even just the Service Fabric modules. If you have the Azure RM.Service Fabric, you have the AZ.Service Fabric, which replaced the Azure RM. You have the Microsoft.Service Fabric.PowerShell.HCP, except it can't do all the things that the Azure AZ.Service Fabric can do. And then you've got, the Service Fabric SDK that comes with the SDK tools, but that doesn't really have any of the Azure support.
Means going forward, we are going to, we are going to consolidate and rationalize our tooling surface. AZ is what I would say bulk of our functionality is supported over there. And again, this is something of a feedback that we can take, and we'll come back with the roadmap, hopefully I would say, in the next quarter when we are planning. Because as you know, that we do like semester-wide planning. Once we are, we are in the process of closing out the current planning semester and planning for the next one. And this is for sure a very valid feedback that we'll be taking.
Right. And that's all I got. Thank you.
Can I hop back like just a couple more questions? I pasted into the chat window basically the pop-up that comes up in the Service Fabric Explorer for being able to create a service. And at least as far back as the last two releases, this dialogue has just been completely broken. And kind of as a parallel note, it's like, hey guys, this is broken. But I've gone onto the GitHub repositories and reported this issue, and it's kind of like it seems like if you report something to the GitHub repositories, it goes into a complete black hole. And if you go onto the Service Fabric GitHub right now, there are probably people have posted questions right there, and they'll get responses from guys like me and Wit, but it doesn't seem like there's any engagement going on community-wise from anybody on the Service Fabric team. And even I would have no idea about this call happening because its existence used to get posted to the blog, but now the blog is only used for announcing, hey, there's a new release. So it's kind of like the Service Fabric as a product is almost invisible from or has no visibility. And I'll go on Twitter and I'll see posts from the Dapper guys and the Orleans guys, but you never see anything from the Service Fabric guys. And what that leads to an impression that is Service Fabric a real product, or is this kind of is something that's going into an end of life?
So there are like let me try to answer that, Jack. And first of all, as I said on the community also, first of all, thanks a lot for the patience, and thanks a lot for fielding those questions and keeping the community alive. So I really, I would say we really appreciate your enthusiasm and your collaboration and partnership. Having said that, now let me switch gears on to the question around the burning question around whether Service Fabric is end of life. Absolutely not. Because if I give you some internal statistics, a core internal services like Cosmos DB, SQL MI, Azure IoT, Azure Edge, they all run on Service Fabric. And trust me, these services are core to Azure itself. When it comes to manning the community and trying to give the due importance that the community deserves and the engagement, as I said, there was a huge churn means in the past few years, and you would see all new faces, at least in the product team, if not in the engineering team. The engineering team is pretty busy in order to support, and with the recent spate of events and the macro trends which you folks are aware about, we need to do more with less. When you do more with less, you need to make hard, I would say, prioritization calls. When you make the hard prioritization calls, there are some aspects of our product that, even though we want to do well and we want to provide coverage, might be just not possible. But again, keeping aside all these, I would say, explanations, we are trying our best, Jack, in order for us, at least the product team, to ramp up so that we are able to engage the community folks like you who have been with Service Fabric for so long and provide the ample coverage. But let me assure you, and in as many words on a recorded line, Service Fabric is not at end of life. Yes, there might be delays when it comes to the fact that your queries are not getting answered in those forums. Maybe we can have a look at how we can optimize, or how we can consolidate our channels on which we are providing support. But trust me, you open a support case with us, you will get the support that you need. The community effort, it's a work in progress, and I don't have a magic wand to fix it. Means you folks are with Service Fabric for so long, and there is a considerable, I would say, learning curve involved in it. And when you have these kind of churns in which new folks are coming in, there is a natural, I would say, learning curve, a natural gestation period when people are confident enough to come in front of the community and field those questions. Trust me, I'm just like 4 months into Service Fabric, and there's huge lot of to learn. So I'm being very authentic and honest in the fact that yes, the coverage is less, but does that pose it to the fact that Service Fabric is end of life? Absolutely not. You will hear a lot of, I would say, coverage, and I'm not talking about particularly from an Azure perspective, but generally in the trends that you would see, our other brethren's getting a lot of, I would say, spotlight. But does that mean that Service Fabric is not doing what it's supposed to do, or it's not the best tool for the use cases that it is for, which is basically high scale distributed computing, especially for stateful applications where you need, where there is no, I would say, external dependencies. Everything is self-managed. We are the best use case for it, and we still are. So I would really like to have you folks, providing us that feedback. But rest assured, Service Fabric as a product is here to stay. And whenever we make that decision in future, Microsoft follows a very standard operating procedure of deprecating things, where the minimum, I would say, heads up, a formal explicit heads up that users get is somewhere around, if my memory says it's right, 18 to 36 months. And trust me, we are not nowhere close to making that decision or reaching to that conclusion. So that was a long, winding, I would say, answer to your question, but rest assured, Jack.
Well, that I mean, I certainly get a feeling that there's been a change over the since you've come on. That there is more of a a recognition that there's a gap there. I mean, from my perspective, what I would love to see would be a consolidated GitHub that one place. As it stands, there's a deprecated Service Fabric, then there's the actual Service Fabric, but then there's also one for the Service Fabric Explorer. and I think there may be, one or two others. And so, I mean, I don't know the practicality, but it seems like, hey, I'm trying to report something, Service Fabric. It seems like it would be great if you could go, there was a one-stop shop for that.
Absolutely, Jack. And this is something that we are contemplating that might be we have. And again, as I said, every product or, means if you worked in startups, you have your own startup. I worked in startup, means there's a time when we have what we call as these heady, unprecedented growth, where we say grow, 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 grow. You make sure that we are spreading the word as much as possible. And then you come to the natural plateau where we are saying that, okay, let's consolidate and let's focus on doing the right things which really matter. Okay. So even though Service Fabric, I think we went ahead and expanded a lot many channels where we have a lot of engagement. But then when the optimization calls need to be made, might be consolidated. And one of the things that, we did post, and I think Mike posted on GitHub, is if there are questions that need to be answered, we could use forums, means Microsoft Forums. The good thing about Microsoft Forums is there is a specific team who's manning those forums. Now, GitHub is completely is a factor of the product team and the engineering team spending some cycles on it. But then if you want to make it more formalized, and there are trade-offs for each of those channels, might be forums. Have we made that call yet? No, we have not. And that is a work in progress. And we will for sure, before making any call, consult the community on it and see that and then make that decision that, as I said, might be all the questions, or in case you need immediate attention, might be forums is the way to go, or might be going ahead on using support cases, and then obviously rationalizing our presence. And in case if there are repositories which are not getting updated, which has stale code, might be the cleanup. Again, all of this, Jack, requires a bandwidth and investments. And in the times that we are, as I said, we need to do more with less. So we are really, really focused on the ROI aspects of it, and hence, in future you will see some of these calls that we will take. We will be cognitive about it, but again, just being very, very honest with you that what's the state of affairs are.
Well, thank you so much for your honesty and taking the time out for these calls. This is really great.
Again, as I said, we really appreciate the partnership, and you folks are I would say, you folks are our sounding boards, and the best indicator of our success as a product, and the feedback means the insights that community provides us. We just saw some of the examples over here is just awesome, and this is in a way you are helping us a lot in helping us prioritize and helping us define that what exactly goes into Service Fabric, which really makes it a product that you folks are continuing to invest and use. So thanks to you.
Well, that reminds me of another thing then. So speaking of limited bandwidth, have y'all spent any more time thinking about open sourcing the Service Fabric Visual Studio templates? I'd love to add a standard Blazor template. I'd love to add, default logic for how I handle dependency injection and logging and all the other stuff that every time I add a service and then have to drop it all in there.
Brilliant question, but again, the thing is, I'll be very honest with you. Our open sourcing exercise that we did, if you look at from the standard metrics of number of check-ins, number of PRs raised, it hasn't.
We didn't talk about that.
It really didn't. It has a lot to. It has a lot to. I would say hope for. Sure. So if you completely look at from a very objective and a prioritization perspective, at least the current metrics that we have is not very indicative of the fact that we would like to, keep on investing into open sourcing until unless we do.
But to some extent, I mean, isn't that a chicken and egg problem? Because I mean,
You are right.
the headcount cut at your side says that y'all don't, you have to prioritize, community outreach or product dev or whatever else y'all are working on. You're focusing on, you have to meet those product deadlines, so you're focusing on those. But then the community doesn't hear from you, and so there is no community. And so you say, well, there's no community, and so where are our open source commits? And it's just me posting, fixing the occasional thing in the Service Fabric Explorer, which I think I also just found the problem with the checkboxes. So if I figure out how to fix this, I'll push this.
Awesome. So thanks a lot. First of all, thanks a lot for that, and thanks a lot for that question, Whit. But so let me tell you, I would say we do value the community engagement. Are we doing a great job around it? Absolutely not. But again, to answer your question around open sourcing that, at least that's not on the backlog of things that we are working on. Means there are other good problems that you really pointed out. And in case if there are interesting proposals that you have, we can always find simplifiers. Because again, there's one thing about going ahead and open sourcing a project, and other, making sure when it's open source, you have enough traction and you have enough presence where people are really contributing and really using it. And that motions or that momentum, at least with Service Fabric, we haven't yet experienced. So we need to really think through hard that whether it really makes sense, and if there are other problems, as you pointed out, the other features that you asked for, maybe you prioritize that.
Sure. And so I guess one more on that vein. I guess this morning I dove into the world of source generators. And those things are fantastic, wonderfully useful, especially with Reactor. And so it occurred to me, is it possible? So I at least know that the code that y'all use to produce the automatically generated manifest for Actor is living in the Actors and Services GitHub repo. I'm pretty sure I saw that at some point. But is there, I guess, is there any hope that could be documented better? How exactly that stuff works, and in the hope of essentially trying to migrate, to the extent that. So I guess here's my use case. So kind of building on what I shared last month, is that right now the lack of managed identity support, running locally, is a real pain point in testing things locally, because you can't have any of the stuff set up in the app manifest and the service manifest for managed identities, because it will fail, because it runs as a network service, and so you can't actually use it locally. And so that means that locally, all my manifests have to take one format, and deployed, they all have to take a different format. And so, and unfortunately, as part of the build pipeline, y'all update them, which means that I essentially have to have something sitting in the build pipeline that captures them and says, let me intercept what you put there, since at least the last time it built, with what should be there for managed identity or not. And so to some extent, it'd be interesting to learn more about, is it possible to disable the thing that does the automatic compilation stuff on your side, and essentially replace that to say, I want to build my own manifest, at least until that can be fixed?
This is something which is like very deep into the code and the generation stuff. So either I will at this point of time
I'll put it in the email,
or you put in the email. But I can ask Jiten if he has a point of view, or you can put in an email, and I'll ask some of my engineering team who are much more well versed, have much more depth, and have much more clarity on the subject to provide some pointers on that.
Of course.
I can only add that is a pain point that we know about. We have had discussions on this one. I think the limitations comes from how the managed entity itself works. I know, Bhaskar, for you, Dragos has most context on it. He's been pushing on it. What his suggestion has been, and I'll try to find the email, and you can probably forward it to these guys as well, is there's the SDK support. If you use the SDK, it works fine for the local development and for the actual deployment as well.
The Azure.identity package?
Yeah, I believe that's what he
No,
mentioned.
Unfortunately, that one fails because by default, it uses a chain credential. By default, I think it hits Visual Studio first. Visual Studio, because when running in debug, it's launched as a network service and not as your local credential. Visual Studio can't, it can't actually access Visual Studio, and so it can't actually secure the token. So then that fails, and the next one's default. But as part of default, it also checks Visual Studio. It kind of goes down this whole chain of things, and then never actually gets to anything that can actually use the credential, including environment for whatever
That's
reason.
interesting because from what I have seen on the threads, that's how some of the teams internally have gotten it working using the SDK.
That'd be great if it suddenly works.
But I will
I've never had any luck with it.
Yeah,
But
I think
I complain about this to every person I can find.
Yeah,
that has anything to do with identity.
I've seen multiple threads internally as well. People were asking because that is the main core problem there, that you have to regenerate your application manifest to be deployed in a production environment versus what runs in Visual Studio. And that is a known pain point. And I know Dragos had been pushing for it, but I don't think we have gotten a good solution there. I'll try to find a thread and maybe we can follow up with Dragos on this one. Yeah.
I mean, that if I could just have that would single-handedly solve one of my biggest problems, and that is I have to deploy anything to a cluster to see if it works.
Yes. No, I hear you, and I think I have been through that because I did part of it for my team as well. So I'm aware of it for sure, but I have to defer to security team for more guidance on that one.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, sorry for hogging the floor here.
No problem. Great conversations. I just wanted to jump back over to the chat to see if anyone posted any questions. Tino, did you have anything that you wanted to add? Or does anyone else have any questions or comments they'd like to contribute? Don't be shy. We've covered a lot of ground here, so if your
just one
thought
more
hasn't been covered, yeah, go ahead. No, you're good.
Not specific to, I guess, Service Fabric itself this time. Is this something we can look forward to on a regular monthly basis again, or since we have missed the third week of the month, are we going back to a usual timetable we can look forward to, or what does that look like?
Interesting question.
I was gonna say with that we're working definitely behind the scenes to try to get a more regular cadence and get back on schedule. I do think though the points that were brought up just about the team dynamic and things having shifted within the team, that we will have to reevaluate what was being done before and see if that can still happen. But I'll let the team
I appreciate that.
chime in.
Especially, I just run into so many of these issues. I just keep a notepad file open of just every single issue I run into so I can bring it up on these calls, which is why I have so many this time. But especially even if we can't necessarily have these calls even every month, though I know I, for one, really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you and get some thoughts back on stuff. Especially for things that aren't exactly a support problem. So support can't help me, but just kind of put it in front of you to say this is just kind of a bigger problem. It's just I really enjoy the opportunity to talk with you about this. Yeah, so thanks for the opportunity to speak with you.
Yeah, I think I will challenge you to put your running list into the Yammer community so that I can tag this team, right?
Yeah.
Don't
so
hold on to it, and then that
great,
way I can make
that's
sure
an excellent
the team
reminder.
sees it. Yeah.
I guess this team has kind of disappeared from ACP. So I guess two of my questions are those that I just pulled right off of ACP from two of the people that haven't gotten a response recently. So I guess just a friendly poke to jump in there.
Well, if you're still taking questions, I'll hop in with one that's kind of come up for me recently. in that according to the the Service Fabric documentation for the actors, they're meant to be single threaded, which I understand. The question that's come up recently was, is it safe to use a task wait all within your actor code? I realize that it may not be recommended that you're doing external, external I/O, but essentially what I'm trying to do in essentially a stateless actor is write to a couple of write something to blob storage and write it to an event hub, and I'd like to do that in parallel, which from the documentation, it doesn't. I don't know if that would be safe or not, based on the threading model.
A quick one, and might be I'm again out of depth on this one. Isn't that an anti-pattern for the actor if you're trying to do a wait on an operation? Means that's the whole value prop for an actor is, right? Means that you don't wait, correct?
Well, I mean, I guess from just to chime in myself from my experience with them, the single thread thing is more related to stuff coming into the actor. And so, the whole turn-based thing has to do with locks coming in, either other actors or other services themselves talking to the actor. If it's the actor itself that, as a just background operation, unsolicited by another operation, kicks off any number of things, there's, as I understand it, at least for outbound from the actor, it can open up as many threads as it wants.
Well, that's essentially the clarification that I'm looking for, because strictly by the, from the Service Fabric documentation, it's not clear from the documentation whether you should, within the context of a single call, i.e. you're in, whether you should or should not spawn multiple threads at that point, even if, say, you say ultimately with the goal of waiting on all of them. In older code, the threading model itself would get you into trouble, and that's basically the question I'm asking.
Yeah, so just limit, because the actor itself can only respond to inbound operations one at a time. Just make sure if you're doing anything that requires a wait or is a multi-threading option, that has to do with entirely either in the actor itself or external to the actor. Ideally, not also talking to a bunch of other actors, which would then in turn experience the same problem. But otherwise, just parallel operations inside the actor itself, no problem.
Have you done that?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
Awesome. That was again, as always, it was a pleasure hosting you folks and hearing from you. Again, thanks a lot for your continued patience. And hopefully, as we get, gather more momentum, more experience with this calls, hopefully the tone would be less apologetic and, more, I would say, more discussions and less of clarifications, like what we just witnessed. Means it's great to hear you folks, trying out new things, and I really look forward to these calls. It's just like such a good learning opportunity. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you all. We are right at time, and I'm pretty sure there are a lot more questions, comments, concerns that will be collected after the call. In the chat is a quick 1-minute survey. Give us your feedback on this particular session. Let us know what you want to hear going forward. It is very important that we get this feedback from you so that we can partner more closely with the Service Fabric team to map out a more regular cadence and engagement plan. So if you have any other questions after the call has ended, definitely feel free to reach out. You can put them on the thread and I'll make sure that it gets back to the Service Fabric team. And with that, I wanted to thank the Service Fabric team. Abe and Divya, thank you for the presentation. And with that, we will see you all next time.
Cheers. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.